This is episode 27 of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster, where we talk about anime and manga because it's fun. I'm your host, Isekai Sensei Sama, aka Brad. I'm joined in this weeb cabal by Bento Baggins, aka Ben.
Hisashibori!
And Kermit D. Grog.
Ahoy hoy!
If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the other series on our feed. We've got Heroin Addiction, where Ben and I read romance and drama manhwa and analyze it way more than it ever should be. And Shonen Jumping the Gun, where Kermit and I read the first chapter of a manga and then make uninformed guesses about how well it'll do. And we want to hear from you. You can talk to us on many different social media platforms, which you can find links for in the description and on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. Come hang out with us on Discord, listen to our Spotify playlist, and get episodes early as well as other perks by supporting us on Patreon. And don't forget to rate the podcast and tell your friends. Well, before we get into it today, as always, I've got a couple news items.
Was any news left after last time?
There actually is.
Wow.
And Kermit, I know that having all those news items really drains you quite a bit.
Yes.
So today's news segment is especially for you.
Thank you.
So I've got, there's only 3 items on the list.
Perfect.
And they're all for you.
Let's get to it.
Ready?
Wow. My birthday.
So none of these I have specific air dates, but they're all 2024 at some point. So
Okay.
we'll get some more details, hopefully, in a little while. But for now, these have been announced. So first off, The Elusive Samurai.
That's finally getting its anime this year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exciting. From the creator of Assassination Classroom. I think I'm going to have a good time with that one. I enjoyed reading it.
Everybody should remember that you covered that on the last review extravaganza.
Yes. Which I had to go look back because I forgot that I had done that.
Which everybody should get ready,
Buckle
because
up your seats.
episode 30 is our next one. It's coming up real soon. Sooner than we
Weird.
expected.
I got mine. I don't know about these two jokers. I've been prepped for months.
And the next one I got here, Kinnikuman, Perfect Origin Hen.
Ultimate Muscle coming back in the year of our Lord 2024.
Yeah. I saw that on there. I was like, what?
Yeah, I know. It's weird.
What
It's
are you
weird
doing?
looking at these. Some of these characters are just like, you can't do those characters anymore. They're all racist stereotypes.
And then last but not least, Beastars Season 3.
Yo, I didn't think about us getting more B-stars. I don't know how more off the rails it can get. Season 1, I was reading the manga, and Season 1 is generally one of my favorite little, romance and stuff, because I don't normally mess with that stuff, but I love it. It speaks to me dearly. Season 2 is just the most, drug-fueled, we're doing this, we're doing that, and it just sort of gets by on being the most insane thing. So, I don't know what happens next. Everybody says the manga's ending is just, the author was done and just did some shit. So, I have no idea what's coming at me, but I will also say if I can get an intro as killer as the first 2 seasons, I'm about it, because the first 2 seasons of Beastars OPs are top tier.
Yeah,
good stuff.
I've never watched it, but that OP, the one that we have on our playlist,
Are
is really
both
good.
of them, I think, because I think you shared me with that English version that I
Right,
adore.
it's the same song, but it's the English version of it. So 2024 is looking pretty good for anime.
Pretty good. Hello. Yes.
I got a bunch of my own stuff coming up, and you got your stuff too.
I got some things too.
Yeah. Nothing for Ben.
Nothing for Ben. He gets more My Hero Academia homework. Back to the mines with you.
I'm sure there's an Oshinoko Season 2 out there somewhere.
I didn't see it on the list.
Not yet.
They're still putting out YouTube videos. They've got a Valentine's Day Giri Choco special thing going on, which isn't helping my defense that it's not a harem thing.
There's friend chocolate. It's okay.
Yeah. Obligation chocolate.
Obligation chocolate. I choose to give you this chocolate because I'm obligated to.
There should be Ralph Wiggum Giri Choco. I don't know who it's for, but
it's obligated. It's really obligated chocolate. I really don't want to give this to you, but we have the concept of face, so we have to. but I want you to know.
Yeah. All right.
Wow, what a spick and span little news segment.
I told you.
I love it.
After we spent
Charged up by that.
half an hour on the last one. So I've been thinking. We've now done maybe 3 episodes where we've talked about villains and sort of like the anti-hero kind of thing. But I was wondering, we've never really talked much about heroes. There's been, in those villain talks, we've talked about it a little bit. And, here and there we talk about the different series and the protagonists of those series and everything. But we've never really sort of gone in depth on like what makes the hero of a manga or an anime and what actually like compels you to want to follow this person on their adventures or, whatever that may be.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of touched on like them through the ages, but not like what makes them tick and what makes them different than like, I mean, our most nearby point is like comic book heroes in the West, which is our kind of closest comparison point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're deep in on villains, but they're never always, for reasons we've covered, they're never as quite as memorable as the heroes are, because the heroes obviously get to stick around.
Yeah, and I wonder if it sort of comes down to the fact that a villain can just be more interesting just because they're sort of outside the bounds of like society and what is acceptable for a person to be doing. But the hero is still always sort of like the central point of a story. I mean, if you think about like a My Hero Academia, Bleach, Demon Slayer, like they all have this central character that even if they have some sort of like, edginess to them, they're still like, I am a person who's gonna save people,
or I have to be the best. That's a lot of them is I have to be the best.
Well, I guess that's the part. Maybe that's part of the conversation is like, is someone who's exclusively just like, I have to be the best at something, is that a hero?
I think that's the question of it. I think that's what makes, because I was cooking on this recently, reading One Piece and Dragon Ball and some other things where it's like, I think we get frustrated with the heroes because we think they need to do good, but I think they are compelling because they are not always just goody two-shoes. That their aims are their own, and they happen to do good along the way. Mm-hmm. And I think that what makes them different. I think we ran into that. I think it was within our village chat where it's that sense of like progression and moving through things. It's not the battle of good and evil, it's the battle of self-improvement, and that creates different kinds of heroes with different kinds of aims than like a classic Western hero would.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to always be a through line, even with a hero who's exclusively like, I'm going to save people. Like, they still need to train and get better to, take on the next threat that's going to come along.
Yeah.
So that progression is still a central part of it, even if it's not like their stated goal of, I have to get better,
It's part of it. I think I'm gonna start with Luffy, and Goku's kind of in there where it's like, it feels like them doing good is the second part. Like, right. Luffy's goal is like, I'm going to be king of the pirates, and taking steps towards that, and that sometimes causes him to show behavior that you wouldn't expect of a hero, and even if he does good in the end, he's not just perfect at it. And that can be frustrating more than a villain kind of going off the path, but you don't see that as a lot in the more standard not anti-heroes in Western culture, I think. Obviously, I'm sure we'll find something at some point, but
I could be talking out of my butt, and if I am, somebody please correct me, but I think part of the reason the cultivation stuff and the self-improvement stuff is bigger in Asia is because there's a bigger emphasis on like really being the best of whatever thing you can be. In like Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism, there's like a purity of craft.
Yes. I would agree with that.
And so I think that's sort of like the Goku thing is like Goku only wants to be a better fighter. And that pure motive of self-improvement will just lead him to doing good. Because pure self-improvement and hard work are just, for lack of a better word, like good karma. And that's probably not the right word to use here, but like, it's just, that's not going to steer you wrong.
Yeah, Goku is placed on a good path by that, even if he's not always like, he's not a Spider-Man. Like, he's not, like Spider-Man, great power comes great responsibility. Spider-Man is focused on, I need to protect the city, I need to protect the people, I need to be here for that reason, where Goku, like you said, is like, he is getting stronger by virtue of like, I want to fight stronger guys. Like, it just always happens to be that the strongest guy is the villain, so he wants to fight them. Or his friends call upon him to it.
And that's part of the reason, like the sports manga, and now we're in the age of the arts manga with like Akane Banashi and Beat in Motion.
Sports and crafts.
Yeah, like Boji the Rock, all those like or I don't know if it's called Boji the Rock. I forget what that one's called.
I think that's what it's called.
Boji the Rock?
Yeah.
The pink-haired girl, she plays like a bass guitar or whatever.
Oh,
she's like
she's
an
in a band.
introvert.
But it's all about you can take that manga story of training and working hard and apply it to almost anything, and it's interesting because somebody being the best they can be at whatever it is they do is inherently like appealing and inherently good.
There's like there's
inherently good, but yeah, I think it is very compelling.
Well, that's what I think. There's this juxtaposition between heroes in the East versus West, at least media wise, because just like you said, this Eastern media philosophy of like, I need to get better at what I'm doing, I'm going to save people along the way, is a very core part of all of these various stories that we read. But then you juxtapose that with a Spider-Man, a Superman, all those Western superheroes, and it's more like, and we've talked about this a lot before, where it's like they're given all of the power right away, and then they have to figure out what to do with that power.
They have to deal with the social and other implications of what they are doing, and the
Right.
moral implications, and not is Superman strong enough to punch the guy enough to save Lois Lane? It's never about that. And I find it interesting how deep in philosophies that we might not think about moment to moment can shape cultural stories. And admittedly, like, I think that's true of any culture. We just happen to be looking at a very specific culture that forms that stuff. But I'm sure that storytelling from a country's like general, because obviously you don't want to group it too much because everybody's an individual, but like there are certain things that are different from place to place about what people hold important or compelled to by hundreds and hundreds of years of that culture growing and changing and whatnot.
I think there's this weird thing where, like, even though the sort of the basics are similar, where you have there's a bad guy and they're doing bad things, and I have to come in as the hero, and I have to save the people and defeat the bad guy. In this Western media mindset, it's more like, I have to be a hero because I have this power. Whereas the Eastern media mindset sort of seems to be more, I need to gain power in order to rescue people.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think about, I'm going to come back to One Piece a lot because I'm still reading it, but like Luffy specifically goes, I need to train because me and my team got curb stomped and I was not strong enough to protect them. So I need to go train to do that now. He can't just decide. He's not dealing with like some sort of political maneuvering. It's literally like, I can't punch good enough. I'm not literally physically strong enough to do this. Mm-hmm. So I have to spend time training. And that being a part of the story. something that really hit me between Luffy and Goku, and I'm sure there's other ones, those are just what's coming to my head, that I don't think you would ever see in comics unless it was like an anti-hero or like whatever a Deadpool is, I guess. But like, Superman is never going to be mean to a random civilian he's trying to save or interact with. But like, Goku and Luffy and others, I'm sure, like I said, are rude to just random people all the time. And that's just part of what they do. They are not just, you know, are they generally on the side of right? Like, compared to the villains, do we call them goody two-shoes? Yeah, but they're still more their own people, where they will be rude or standoffish to people who are not bad, who don't necessarily deserve that behavior, but it's like, that's just who they are. And we'd never see that in our, like, these are the heroes. And no, like, you know, Spider-Man quips at people, but he's not quipping at, like, the civilians he's saving. He's not being mean to, like, he's not being rude to them in moments if he's confused. Like, that's just not a thing that's going to happen in a comic book unless you, again, have, like, a Deadpool type or somebody who's like, get over here, bub. Like, the heroes, the top of the charts guys, your Batmans and whatnot, don't do that. Captain America is not going to say something bad to people he's saving in the way that a Goku would. And I find that is interesting about the standard maybe we as Americans hold to them, and maybe that's why, like, that's a question I'd love to get answered. Do people in Japan get frustrated about Goku's behavior in the way that we do? And because the answer is I have no idea.
Yeah.
Frustrated how?
Because we always get frustrated that it's like, because at the end of the day, even if he seems like a good guy, Goku's main motivating factor is, I need to be the strongest and I want to get in bigger, better fights. And that will, a lot of the time, put his friends, entire cities, planets, galaxies, universes, timelines, all at risk. Because he wants to punch the strong guy and get punched.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, because I know in Japan there was a lot of disagreement about the anime portrayal of Goku being a lot more heroic than the manga. Like, Toriyama's talked about that a couple of times. How he never saw Goku as a hero, and he doesn't like how the anime made him seem like a hero. It downplays a lot of his stupid decisions, his selfish decisions.
That he is a hick, but we just don't, like, by virtue of the version that we got at the time we were all formative, and the other people that we osmosis it from, like, he's not a hick in the American dub. Like,
Yeah.
he's just a man. And is he a little dumb sometimes? Yes, but it's like, as a concept, we just don't take him in as what he actually is.
Well, and that's is it that when they localized it, they were like, we need to make this more like Western superheroes?
Almost
Well, Toriyama
assuredly,
was even
I'd say.
talking about the Japanese version. But the version in the West, when they changed his voice from a female voice actor to a male voice actor who does the hero voice, who sounds big and tough and masculine, and really, like, it hits different when you hear Goku yelling at Frieza in Japanese. He sounds annoyed and fed up and all these different emotions, whereas in America you hear it and he sounds angry and intimidating and just very macho.
I mean, I guess there's literally our sensibilities shaping these stories coming over. Admittedly, at a time when we were not as, not cognizant. Cognizant is not the word. That we weren't as, careful about maintaining context and tone and all that. Because, I mean, what?
Well,
like, sorry, you go, Ben.
Oh, no, I was going to say, if you see Dragon Ball Super now, it's the same voice actor doing Goku, Sean Schemmel, I think.
Sean Schemmel, yeah.
And
like that.
He has pitched his voice up for the standard Goku delivery versus what it used to be.
Yeah, but it's still like Goku's never going to be the Japanese Goku, and I don't mean that just by language in America, because that's not who Goku in America is, and it's too late to change the train. Unless we do like a back from square one situation.
I mean, Dragon Ball Daima.
I don't know. But like people are still gonna be like, well, that's not Goku. But it's like, it is Goku. He's just not our Goku, which is a weird Goku that is real because he existed, but he didn't exist because it's not what Goku is. But also he's a fictional character. He never existed. Yada yada yada. So the bit I wanted to say to that though, a little bit with this whole like how it changed coming over is like because so many major shonen series where the main male character is played by an old woman, or maybe they're old now, like. I think the West figured that out then, because like at least the big ones I can think of, like Naruto, is played by a woman in America in the English dub. Luffy is played by a woman in the English dub. I don't know.
I don't know enough.
I don't know who
English
voices.
dubs.
I don't know the recent dubs. I don't know who's dubbing like Deku or Tanjiro. But I guess those are both played by men.
It always makes more sense to me when the child is played by a woman. But then when it's like
an old, like the fact like an old granny is playing Naruto in both Japanese and English is really funny and strange to me.
Yeah. Have you ever seen, this is kind of related, have you ever seen those like comparisons of video game box art in Japan versus America?
Angry Kirby?
And in Japan, it's always more violent. Like they'll literally make Kirby look angry in America versus Japan. It's all cute.
Yep. Kirby's here and he's pissed. He's pissed to have had to come to America.
I mean,
Kirby feels like actually a character that really fits this, where it's just like cute and cuddly, and like no, he's just doing his Kirby thing. Like he just happens to be solving these problems, but he's just Kirbying around.
I mean, lore-wise, he's literally just a force of nature.
Exactly.
Poyo.
I don't know the Kirby lore at all. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Oh, do you know? There's like deep Kirby lore that I will never comprehend, of like crazy space stuff that happens when you like beat the double extra game and you get all the lore, and it's like. Kirby, Poyo.
Yeah, but I definitely think there's also something too about the age of most of those heroes in the shonen comics versus the American comics, where in the American comics the hero is almost always an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that Peter Parker as a teenager was like
one of
this is the weird, crazy thing.
He's one of the most relatable ones, though, and they've tried to make others, but it's always just, here's the young version of this other guy, and it's like...
Short of... there's a bunch of X-Men that are teenagers, but like...
Baby Goku, teenager Luffy, teenager Naruto, teenager Deku, teenager
I
Tanjiro.
Guess a lot of those, the X-Men teenagers, that's more of a recent thing, right? Like the original...
the 70s.
The original run of those X-Men...
Are they adults then? I don't actually know.
They're basically adults. I mean, they're young adults, but...
They're not kids.
They're basically
They're not
adults.
sub-18 children going on a journey.
Because even like, you think about like Starfire and Robin and Ray and all that. They were, I think they called them teenagers, but they were like 18 originally.
Yeah. They were not going to high school.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is you had this problem in the West with the Comics Code Authority where superheroes were the only thing that could get through. And for God's sake, how long was Stan Lee in charge of Marvel? And I know everybody loves him. I don't really. I don't think he was that great. And he didn't come up with half the stuff he's credited with. But all of it was drawn from that 1940s sci-fi of like a scientist or a titan of industry.
I'm an adventurer. It's a comic, but it's the 50s.
I'm just a normal guy wearing spandex.
Yeah.
Well...
I've got a gun.
One of the most magical things about shonen manga is it ends at some point. It's one guy making it. He can only make it for so long. And that's stopping now. Everything's getting sequels and spin-offs. But
Kaiju number 8 has a spin-off. How the heck did that happen?
What?
Kaiju number 8 has an anime coming and a spin-off already. And I this is my own tangent. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Well, they've discovered the money to be made in IP. But
where's my Sakamoto Days anime? Come on.
But we got stuck with these characters that are relics of the 40s, and we have to constantly try to find a way to make Captain America work in 2024 because it's just too recognizable of a property.
So you think because he's stuck in time? I mean, Captain America was literally stuck in time, so he's not the greatest example to talk about using that verbiage, but like... we as Americans have that as our quote-unquote ideal hero just because we've had that frozen since the 50s.
I think the Comics Code Authority stuff, that we've got a holdover from that, where these stories that we originally had to be like American exceptionalism and like ideal individual, rugged individualism and everything.
We do get the anti-hero, but then the question is there a comparison point to your manga hero, and that somebody who is good but is not your standard goody two-shoes hero, but is not an anti-hero, who's not like a gruff like loner type? Like, do we have this archetype at all somewhere?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I'd say a lot of the X-Men got into that. And I've said this before on the podcast. When I was a kid, you either read the X-Men or everything else.
Yeah.
Because there was a dozen in-universe X-Men comics, and it was a big soap opera, and they hardly ever interacted with the Avengers except for the big team-ups at the end of the year.
It's like a character who is generally good but is like morally gray, but not in a way that you would notice unless you were like really trying to fit him to an alignment chart. Because I don't think about Luffy's being morally gray, but he's kind of guided by his own compass that is not what is best for the situation. His compass is, I'm going to be king of the pirates. He has a specific goal that is for himself that that solves problems in his wake, we'll say.
Yeah.
He's moral relative to his world.
Correct.
And the problem is, all of our comics, for a long time, I know there's indie comics that are different, but for a long time, they all tried to be gritty and realistic.
In the 90s.
Our celebrated heroes, we'll say. How about that? The people we put in balloons and on buses.
Well, but even then, I mean, you had friggin' 90s Superman, black suit, and he got killed, but then he came back and all that bullshit.
Is Garfield our Goku? Garfield is morally gray. I guess he doesn't really solve problems.
No.
Garfield's goals are napping and eating lasagna, and he also kicking Odie and mailing Nermal, and this is falling apart very quickly.
That's the thing, though, because you think about that period of time where like everything had to be dark and gritty in Western comics, and like Batman very easily fit into that, but everybody else was sort of just like, you know, teenager edgy and like sort of lame in that regard, but they still were centered around, I have this power and I'm going to save people. Sort of the narrative shifted more to like, oh, I have this power. It's bad that I have this power,
deep,
but I'm going to do good with it, you know, kind of like.
Yeah.
But it was still framed in that way, and it I can't really think of a time where it ever shifted to like, we gotta train up so that we can face the next big threat. It's like all of the Western heroes get paired up against a villain that matches them. And like, if there's a bigger, worse villain, there's a bigger, better superhero to take them on.
Deal with it, yeah. I'm going to throw a name. Oh, sorry, you go, Ben.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I really think the cultivation thing comes back to the whole idea of like chi and stuff. Mm-hmm. In the West, you just get as strong as like peak performance. You're an Olympic athlete. That's the top. There's a limit.
You're already there. You have to solve problems with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bat a name at you guys, and I think it's fitting because this is a guy that Japan does love, that I think maybe fits what I'm looking for. Popeye.
That's a weird one because there's.
I'm not super up on my Popeye lore, but like, he is a guy who punches things and solves problems, but he's not always like, I'm doing good. I'm doing good for me. But he's not an anti-hero. He's not necessarily like a jerk.
Well, he would save everybody, but he never really got himself. He never put himself in situations. He didn't like seek it out. It was more like he's just going around doing his thing, and those situations come to him.
Is that not Goku?
I mean,
is that not Dragon Ball? Is that not Z? Technically even Z. Is that not Dragon Ball?
But he also, I mean,
Popeye
I
doesn't
think
have a goal.
True.
Yeah, But and there's also like he didn't train or anything. Like he had that power. He gets a power up from spinach, but like that's it. And so yeah, it's weird because it sort of straddles that line of like that pirate notion of I'm just doing this because I want to.
I'm going on my set path.
Yeah.
And if you get in my way, screw you, buddy.
But that's also a gag character as opposed to a Superman or Captain America or something like that.
No, but I think I'm trying to find this connector point because Popeye is a character Japan likes.
Yeah.
And has liked for literally longer than I've been alive. One of Nintendo's first games is Popeye. Like, he's popular.
Part of the reason it appeals is because World War II, that was just a popular cartoon about a sailor around that time when there were a ton of Americans in Japan. But I think the other part of it is it is more like a manga. It's a wacky world with stylized rules and a funny guy. It's a gag manga.
Yeah.
I think that's why it works.
But there's something about it that sticks around. I mean, I guess I'm using the tentpole of Nintendo made a game about that like it's 30 plus years from when there's the American occupation to when they make the Popeye game and are still making Popeye merch. Like, I don't know how much I can use this as a point of like, this is a character of Japan. Maybe we can use that as, are there other American characters that Japan specifically was like, is still big on?
Spider-Man.
Yeah, but that's in a different way.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they like the reason that... I don't want to be like, you guys like it, but not for the... We are not alike. We like them for different reasons. But it feels like a lot of Spider-Man is more of the, like, what went into Sentai stuff. And maybe I need to be more knowledgeable about Sentai.
There is another side to this because we've talked a lot about the... the training arc kind of thing where it's like, I need to get more powerful to fight the next villain and everything. But like the Super Sentai stuff, they were that powerful. Like they get the suit.
They're very Western.
Yeah.
I feel like I've run into this, and I believe we'll be talking about in a later segment, but I've read a book of like an old English-made book about manga, and I found that it's weird how much stuff in manga is from the West, and it's just been so long that we just don't know it. Like it's grown over so much that you're like, oh, these ruins, and it's like, oh, this used to be a Chuck E. Cheese. But they're ancient ruins to us now. Like, I think a lot more gets plucked from Western stuff than we think.
Well, I mean, and that makes total sense given the way that Japan built up after World War II.
No, but it's pre-World War. But we had that last time with whatever topic I was talking about. I don't remember, or with Christmas. It was Christmas. A lot more came from the West into Japan than we think about, because we just go, oh, the Americans show up after World War II, and that's when they get all of their Western stuff. And it's like, no, this stuff is like, they have Disney movies before the war.
Why did they attack us?
What? There was a lot of assholes in Japan at that moment.
We had a navy in the Pacific, and they wanted it.
We were on the other side of the Pacific, and they were on that side.
Because they thought we were going to be coming.
They liked all our stuff. Why didn't they just leave well enough alone?
Dude, like I said, World War I, Japan, on side of the quote-unquote allies, on the American side, quote-unquote.
Because America did not support Japanese imperialism, and they thought that was hypocritical and racist.
I mean, a little bit.
And maybe it kind of was.
I mean, this is... Both are right. One is maybe a little bit more right than the other.
Probably still shouldn't have attacked us.
Yeah, no, shouldn't have.
Or anyone. But they're gonna.
I think in that moment we were more right of their imperialism of killing a bunch of Koreans. I'm getting off topic. Back to Hero Talk.
We'll talk about that some other time.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but I think you're right. Like we definitely, our comic book industry is crippled to this day from the comics book authority.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason manga and anime took off so hard in America is there was no one looking at that market.
That is mentioned in my manga book, is that the American Comics Code happened, and that kind of thing never happened to Japan. They had people like calling for boycotts, but it never, the publishers are just like, yeah, so what? F you, we're going to double down. Like, it's so weird seeing that. Like, I'm so used to American capitalism where it's just like, oh, our bottom line, you stop that interesting thought, artist, where they're just like, the publishers in Japan are just like, oh yeah, fuck it, just keep drawing your porn, I don't know. Or whatever the heck stories you're drawing. Like, it's a thing I think about is like, what does the timeline look like where the comics code doesn't happen and American comics get to properly like grow and aren't just like not choked out entirely in the cradle, but like stuck in Arrested Development for decades. And then once they get out of the starting block, it's kind of too late.
I don't know if your book covered it, but like one of the things I've read is that in the 60s, both countries have huge protest movements. In America, the media associated with that becomes music. In Japan, manga got deep into the protest movement.
I got a little of that. That was one of the things I don't want to bring what's there too much to now, but like that is one of the things where it's like Japan has a bunch of political comics. And I was like, Japan has a bunch of political comics that inspired by British political comics and like the New Yorker, and I'm like, what? Like, it was weird.
We are limited in our everyday exposure.
I guess that's the thing is like we had the comics code, but like, wow, this is getting way off topic from where we started. But I just like this topic too much. Like America, even if our like creative stuff got stifled, like people could still make political comics. Like that was a thriving scene that grew into its own stuff. And Japan, that got choked out in the cradle by the government, and that created a very different thing. So I think maybe I'm not equipped to talk about the politics of either of these countries over the last however many decades to it, but like maybe this is where your heroes go when you are allowed, you're not stuck by this rigid code and being, by virtue of like, this is what comics are, where manga isn't that really, where it's like manga was very experimental, even if we only are mostly seeing the punch stuff now. Like, because of its roots, it became, as Ben said, like this big cultural thing countrywide.
I mean, literally, to tie it back to the hero thing, why can't Superman be mean to civilians? He's not allowed. That's in the comics code.
Yeah.
The hero can't blur the line between hero and criminal. If you read the comics code, the guidelines, that story would have been rejected. And now it's 2024 and Superman still has an established personality as being the kind of person that doesn't exist, who never gets mad at anybody, who doesn't deserve it.
A hero is somebody, a Western hero is somebody unattainable on an emotional, moral level, and an Eastern hero is unattainable on a physical ability.
Well, I mean,
level.
so is the Western. I don't know, because like I like having a couple of those sort of like idealistic heroes and putting them into situations where they need to deal with their idealism and how that affects, the people around them and everything. I like Superman to be there.
Yeah.
To sort of be like, this is the perfect guy and you should strive for this even though you can't reach it.
Yeah, he's not bad. I'm definitely in the state that like he is not bad and he has his own things that make him interesting and compelling.
When you look at the Comics Code Authority though, like the fact that they all have to be that's where I think you run into problems, because you just get this homogenized sort of flat platform of like everybody is the same. We're all doing the same thing, just in different cities.
And I'm not being pedantic when I say he's Jesus. Like, that's the point of the Comics Code Authority, is comics are under that authority, under those guidelines, exist to teach children how to behave morally. They're not to entertain. They're not to make you think. They're there to provide like subliminal messaging about morality. And at the time, it's a Christian morality being exercised against those godless communists. And it stripped all deeper messaging out of comics until the 70s. And by then, every company that was doing anything interesting was totally out of business. Some of them did try to keep publishing, but no store would stock the comics without that stamp on it because they turned it into a whole McCarthy thing.
Do you think that's why there's such this hard turn into the anti-hero then and all that and the grittiness because
Yeah, I would think
they
so.
were like stuck, and that's why we don't have these like I'm just gonna call them like middle path heroes that are not super moralist but not necessarily
more along the lines of a Luffy or Goku kind of thing. Yeah.
These are guys out doing their thing.
Yeah.
Because everybody who was interested in a nuanced artistic expression left comics.
Yeah.
And I think it's only with the popularity of anime and manga, or maybe coincidentally since the times have changed, that some of that blood is getting injected back into American comics. We are starting to see new stuff finally.
That is interesting.
Because, yeah, a lot of the heroes that you see becoming a lot more popular now with the rise of, the Marvel Cinematic Universe and stuff, they're still quintessentially heroes who are going and they're rescuing people and they're, like, morally upright and everything. But they're also sort of snarky and they quip a lot. You got your Doctor Strange, your Tony Stark and them. Where it's more like their actions are still heroic, but they're gonna like be a bit of a dick while they're doing it.
You saying the Disney stuff, actually, not even superheroes. I think somebody who actually kind of fits it, it's Mando. It's Mandalorian a little bit. Man set by codes, goes around, doing stuff. Not always just purely the most moral guy. I don't think I'd call him an anti-hero.
He was a villain. Like the Mandalorians in the Star Wars movies were bounty hunters, and bounty hunters were bad guys.
Yeah, he's of that cloth, but I mean literally the one in The Mandalorian.
Yeah,
he's not those guys.
I think that's more along the lines of Boba Fett. I don't know if the full gamut.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is we talk about like why do we like villains so much more than heroes, and it's because villains were allowed to be complex, but heroes had to be an example.
But I'm saying now that we are out of that. We are out of the comics code because I mean you feel the effects of those things for a long time in ways that you can't parse because you can't comprehend the universe where that decades could pass from that divergent moment.
Also, I don't know that that's entirely fair, considering that like a lot of villains in anime and manga are also complex and interesting.
Yes, but they're both hero and villain can be complex. We had the ability to do both of that in our comic medium.
Definitely on the Western side, like I can see it coming out of that because of the fact that the hero had to be a blank slate, basically, of upright morality. But
there's a second thing to that, though, because when you get the people that grew up with manga in their student movements and they stayed with manga a little longer than most American teenagers stayed with comics, you get characters that are meant to appeal to more emotionally mature people.
right.
Yeah, there's a market for it because it wasn't being, choked to death by a code. And it was allowed to culturally flourish. Then I'm still just, it's not necessarily a hero chat, but I'm still coming back to, where America in the 60s counterculture movement went in music, that it was in manga for Japan. And how that changed, I think when I look at that, because, there wasn't really a crackdown in music. I know we're getting off the reservation a little bit more again, but,
If you look at Japanese music and American music is, really, we still to this day care so much about authenticity and message and morals, unless it's pop, but pop is treated as cheap. Whereas in Japan, no one questions the fact that it's a giant machine.
We've talked about that. It just our Goku is just showed up in other places. He showed up in music. He was not in comics.
Bob Dylan is our Goku.
Bob Dylan is our Goku.
I mean, Bob Dylan is our Spike Spiegel or something. It's all of that edginess in music Japan doesn't seem to want that in music. I mean, and we're painting with a broad brush here. Obviously, there's
the
both,
general the pop culture. I mean, that's what all of these are. These characters can exist in either one, but by generally the ones that stick around for ages or that are very popular, are venerated and remembered, the ones that bubble up to the surface the most. Like, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. I'm just trying to... We've covered a lot of stuff here, and I don't know that there's any conclusion to this.
It's tough to... I think the conclusion for me is you can't do a one-to-one comparison.
Yeah, they're just different worlds.
Comic book heroes across these countries, because the political situation, the cultural situation, it's so different. But I don't think there's anything different about the people, because America just devoured manga as soon as we could get our hands on it.
It's just expressed in a different format.
It's almost good in a way that Japan existed to preserve whatever artistic merit our comic books had to sell it back to us later after the comics book authority was gone.
And did we sell them back the music authenticity?
No, we sold them our music. They still haven't quite.
Yeah, we sold them our music. They love it.
Yeah.
I think the moral, not the moral, but the point of this is our continuing painting of the way culture ideals can instill into the stories a culture generally writes, and how that can shape the characters and the storylines and the villains and the themes of what they're about. Even if the themes can be same across both, how they are approached. I think this is just another part of that painting, of that showing of a difference. And I think one day I want to remember this painting when we finally do our Hamburger Shonen episode and dig into those with that painting nearby to go, okay, what is being brought over in these attempts to recreate this over here? Because I still don't think as many things are anime-like that were made in the West. I don't know if I've had one that felt like a shonen manga or an anime. Things have aped the style and done similar things, but none of them have gotten the bones, the structure of it. They've been always very superficial and like, oh, they shout the attack names, but none of them have gotten, I don't think, have gotten the bones of it. So I guess this is our continuing exhumation of the bones of these stories. I'm shouting the bones a lot. It's fun.
I'm gonna throw this out there. This might be a completely other discussion to have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pitching. I'm setting up for a sequel down the line that will cite back to this in a bibliography.
What you mentioned, Ben, about like, we took manga and went, oh, this is what we wanted with comics, but we couldn't get it, and then to a certain extent, maybe giving Japan music and saying this is what you wanted but you couldn't have.
But we didn't get music. We didn't get the manga until much later.
Right. But I'm wondering if there is a thing there where it's like, because I've always thought a lot about like, oh, the future of humanity is we need to become a global society, and everybody can be taken care of, and sort of utopian ideals that maybe are unrealistic, but like the general sense of like we're an interconnected world. But that makes me wonder if like the fact that we have these different societies that are structured differently, maybe in bad ways, but maybe in good ways,
in different ways,
that sort of
neither
like
good nor bad,
all have these different outlets for the cultural zeitgeist, that when we later sort of pass them between cultures allows for those important things to stick around where they might not have in a more homogeneous humanity.
Yeah, I think you're stumbling onto a point a lot of people have made who are scared of the globalization. It happens a lot, like with languages. There's so many languages that are dying, that are just being wiped out by English, and other people who are not native to that society are learning them to try to preserve them. There's a reason why France forces kids to speak French, even though many would rather just speak English because it's easier. But I do think that you're going to see something happen, and you've already started to see it as English becomes prevalent and the internet connects everybody, of the borders of where you live matter less to your culture than what you're interested in and where you hang out online. You see it. I see it a lot in music today. Like, if you're into, I'm into two very different spheres of like EDM music and heavy music, and you'll see them occasionally like branch across. Most people never tread too far out of like their bubble there, but you do see different interests and tools and techniques come up that sometimes get shared. But yeah, you will lose something if we globalize. It's not going to look the way it looks now, and it'll take us a while to shake out and disperse and diverge again. And
Well, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
No.
But maybe something to pay attention to. As you're consuming all of the various media, Western or otherwise, or Eastern or otherwise, pay attention. See what you think is being pulled in from other cultures and what we might be taking from those cultures. So I've been having this issue recently.
Yes, we're in the Isekai Sensei Sama Yells at Cloud segment.
you know what grinds my gears?
You know what creases my pages?
So I think everybody is in agreement that the Frieren anime is just excellent, right?
Yes.
There's been this Discord. There's been this discourse online.
In a Discord.
On
Yes,
Discords.
probably.
And other places.
Probably Reddit. I'm going to guess Reddit.
It's discordant in that. So the issue that I had, and this is not really a big deal, but the anime is sort of positioning the relationship between Himmel and Frieren in a much more romantic way than the manga really portrayed it, at least early on.
For a while, yeah.
And when a lot of the conversations started coming out, when the anime first released and people started talking about it, everybody was like all on board with this ship, Himmel and Frieren. Oh, and like I'm reading this discourse as an avid Frieren manga reader and going, what are you guys talking about? No, she's oblivious to everything that's going on. That's the whole point. Like, it's not about their romance. It's about Frieren exploring emotions and all this. But that's what the majority of the conversations were about, is this romance stuff. And it frustrated me because my experience with the manga was so much more around like Frieren's experience of like human emotions. Like, she's so old and she's so disconnected from the world, having lived so long, that she couldn't really understand the connections that she was having with these people that she journeyed with for 10 years. And it wasn't until that journey was long over that she sort of awoke to what that actually meant to her. And I didn't think that the manga, and the anime for that matter, was hiding that. It wasn't like something you had to dig down and search for to find that deeper meaning. It was fairly upfront about what it was exploring. And that got me thinking, because this is something that, we've gone over somewhat on the podcast, but also just in our regular conversations. I think we've gone over this quite a bit, where we find that the conversations that people have about a lot of the media that we consume tends to be very surface level, and a lot of times seems to completely miss the point.
They miss the point.
And I think the general question that I sort of want to answer and what I want to go over in this segment is like, is it okay to just let people consume these things at a surface level, to just miss the point and just have fun with it?
Okay, before we delve in, I'm going to confirm, because I know you've been vaguely talking about this idea, and now we're here and talking about it in detail. Is this conversation just the meme where it's the little cartoon guy looking at a Gundam, and he's like, wow, robots are cool, and the Gundam is shooting like a missile that is arcing over top of his head, that it's like, war is bad, or whatever Gundam is actually about, that people use, especially for anime, of like, people missing the point of it?
I think there's some of that. And if we had talked about this 2 years ago, I might have been more along the lines of like, oh, people need to think more deeply about what they're consuming. But my experience with the Frere and stuff, which has sort of also expanded my thoughts on the media consumption in general and made me like look in other various areas for the conversations that are happening. It seems like even sort of the more overt, in your face conclusions that the stories are trying to draw are just completely missed.
You know, I don't. If you rule that it's not okay to let people consume these things at a surface level, I have to ban you from all those slavery isekai you read.
And that's sort of spoilers, but the conclusion that I've come to is I think it's fine.
You can't stop people.
Right,
to do that is dumb
obviously.
and stupid and police statey. But
do we have an obligation to go into these?
Do we have a soapbox to go? You guys are missing the. It's the kind of people. I think it's when it becomes. I don't even know if hypocritical is the right word, but it's like people talking about. I know the one I wanted to bring into this is us finally talking about One Piece in somewhat more detail, is like people going like, One Piece isn't a political story. And it's like, have you read One Piece at all? And this story that's constantly about a corrupt government and capitalism and racism and years of like all of this.
And I just before we move on to address Ben's point, just because I read all of those things doesn't mean that I can't like have a conversation about it and understand sort of the more nuance of it.
You criticize society that you also live inside.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting, no.
But yeah, I think it comes down to the question of like, do I have an obligation as someone who is reading a lot of these things at a more deeper level? Do I have an obligation to go and find these conversations and jump in and say, hey, there's actually more to this, and if you think about this and that and the other thing?
As someone who reads them on a deeper level, no. As a media critic with a media criticism podcast, yeah. I mean, like, critic's an ugly word, criticism's an ugly word. We don't want this to just be a review show. But that is what we're doing. We're looking into things. We're finding themes.
I think that's sort of this podcast in general. I mean, that's been the theme that the moral of the segment so many times is like think about the media that you're consuming.
But you don't always have to think, because you do that you do that all the time.
Yeah,
you're kind of you're the perfect storm for this conversation.
But we also don't have a huge audience as much as we might like one, and so like,
so we don't have the responsibility.
Well, no, it's more like we can talk about that stuff on this podcast and get into it and talk about like, hey, this is actually really deep, and you should think more about this, and just in general think about the media consuming, but like, when we're out in these spaces on Reddit or Discord or wherever it is, and we see these conversations
you saying, are you obligated to tell people there's
obviously
more
we're
going
not
on?
Obligated, but like morally should we? should we say,
I don't think
hey,
morality comes into this.
No.
I think you should have the conversation with people. I think you can gawk at people that are missing a very clear point. I think your initial example, the Frieren thing, is one that I find comical in this a little bit for both you seeing the deeper things but also missing that theme, because that's just not, like, some of it can come down to just, oh, I didn't see this. Sometimes I think it's like, oh my gosh, you dumb teenagers, like, how do you not see this? Like,
Well,
I
that
think,
was my
I think
thing.
there's varying, like, levels of it, but I don't think you should, like, I don't think you should dunk on people or, like, educate
No.
them if they
I'm
don't
not-
see it, unless they're being, like, again, I point back to the, like, you know, one certain ones where it's like, so-and-so's not, it's not political, and it's like, yes, it is. Like, you just are being
I don't
willfully or woefully
I don't
ignorant about what's going on because you want to see haha funny punch man.
I don't think it's ever helpful to dunk on people, I should
My
say.
favorite genocidal douchebag, Eren Yeager. Is it appropriate? Do I think it is appropriate for a bunch of edgelords to be running around with that profile pic of Eren with his man bun and his open shirt and like rippling muscles, looking so badass and so cool, when he's basically Hitler?
Is Eren Yeager the custard fascist? Or is he a Schrodinger's fascist where you don't know if he's a fascist or not?
I think Eren
that's a
Yeager is
deep
pretty
That's a
definitively
deep cut to my
fascist.
own life that we've never talked about on podcasts.
That's a deep cut to the Kermit lore.
Yeah.
But no, I
Custard fascist.
I'll tell the story. We'll put it after the boops. I'll tell the story
There's-
again.
there's a debate over what the meaning of Attack on Titan was. Is it anti-fascist or is it fascist?
That's the custard fascist. It's perfect.
Yes, yes. But there's not a debate over whether the character of Eren Yeager made the wrong choice. I hope. Spoilers for Attack on Titan. I'm not going to get into it, but like,
The fact
That's-
that you are not sure is a problem.
I feel
I'm
I've run to
sure.
that places where I'm like, I don't know if this is.
No, yeah, you're
Yeah.
sure about your own feelings on it.
yeah.
The fact that we don't know if the greater conversation being had about it is for or
I've
against.
definitely run into series and other things, let them be manga otherwise, where it's just like, this is very clearly topping at a topic, but I don't know how the plane is going to land, because it could land either way of pro or anti of whatever is being covered, and it can be very like, oh gosh.
There's also
But I
there's
brought that up because the stakes are higher, because that is an explicitly political manga
Yeah.
that relates to things going on in the world today. I still wouldn't probably hop in just a general conversation about Attack on Titan. I don't exist in a lot of anime spaces to see these conversations because I don't want to talk to people about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But I do think it's important to talk about, and the way I like to dissect media and stuff is to get on this podcast or get on a podcast or do a blog post after I've thought about it for a little bit. And
I also I feel like there's multiple levels to this, because something like Attack on Titan I sort of feel is more sort of like a middle ground where, yeah, sort of the overall message should be fairly obvious and like people should probably agree on what that is, but
Yeah, but what is the author's intention?
yeah, there's the author's intention, and also the ideas that it's tackling are sort of more complex, generally speaking. Whereas I feel like something like Frieren, it frustrates me a whole lot more because I personally feel like the topics that it's dealing with, as far as human connection and emotions and all that stuff, is so surface level to the story that's being told that it's like so in your face. And so when people miss it, it's that much more frustrating.
I mean, they could be teenagers. It's the thing I always talk about, that I don't
You never
generally
know who
like
you're
talking.
talking to
You don't know
online.
who you're talking to. You don't know what life experience they've happened. Completely going off of the reservation of anime, I have the interesting time of talking to people who are into musicals of when they saw Rent, because if they saw Rent then when they were teenagers or children, they love it. But I saw it as an adult and I said, these people suck. This existence is hell. This existence is kind of mean to people actually suffering, and I think it's really stupid. I don't have that, like, fanciful view of it because I have to live and work in the actual world. I'm not a teenager or a college student where it's still there's an idealized world waiting for me. I'm in it. I'm seeing what's happening. I think it's stupid. And if you don't have the life experience to notice those things, you're not necessarily going to see them if you're not equipped.
But do you feel like Rent was upfront about how bad that stuff was? And it's
No, because Rent is glamorizing and celebrating.
So in that case,
that's one where it's like, I don't know if this is. I think it's celebrating this, but there's like a singular moment, at least in the movie version, where it's like, are you pointing to these rich yuppies suffering for no reason because of their quote-unquote art? And like, I guess that's the thing of like the Attack on Titan, where it's like, I don't know where this plane is landing because it could go either way. It could be showing it's like, yeah, these people suck, and there might be some through line, but it's like Rent. That's not what Rent feels. Rent does not feel that at all.
That then is taking the track of the work itself is wrong, so to speak, and what you should be reading into it is more complex than what it is presenting to you.
You will read into it what your life experiences is the more point that I am trying to make.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing with like Frere, and if you're like a teenager and you're in like, you know, and you're like, oh, like you can see that more. But like even between the two of us on that topic of the romance, like we've clashed on that. Just to put it somewhere else.
And yeah, and to be clear, like
You've come around on it a little bit, but you were really you were beating up on it for months about it because we talked about it most every anime night.
The thing was, it was never that I was like, no, they can't be in love. This is horrible. It wasn't supposed to be like that.
You were
like,
a little bit.
It was just that it wasn't
what
open about that in the manga, and I will give people that in the anime they go into it a lot more.
It's there. Media is a mirror. You are going to see not literally yourself, but you're going to see what you see in it. People can see stuff in things that aren't there. Like you can get themes out of things that the author didn't even intend or think about, but it can be there by virtue of how the work exists.
Yeah.
Because I want to put it somewhere, and then Ben, whoever you can go on that. I just literally just want to get this out because I liked it and nobody commented on it. I made a shit post summary of Frere and of Ancient Auntie goes on road trip with her grandkids to find out she's not Ace.
I did see that. That was pretty good. Yeah.
And I was just like really proud of myself for that one.
No, I was
how Stella found she had a groove in the first place.
Oh, that's a good one too. No, I was going to say that, like, you're basically talking about just media criticism in general, and I would say nobody responds well to being scolded.
Yeah, exactly.
If that's the tone these conversations would take.
I never. That might be the tone that I take when we are discussing these things, because we are three friends talking to each other about this stuff. Even though we're putting this out,
we're getting frustrated at strangers. It's the less murderous version of one person is a person and 1,000 people are a statistic.
Yeah.
Like it's the unwashed masses and the individual people that have their unique opinions and ideas and life experience.
But whenever I approach these like online discussions and I type something up and put that out there, it's always much more individualized to the person that I'm responding to.
You are admittedly the most online in that regard of the three of us.
For example, I did want to point this example out because I think it's very relevant, and it just happened. 2 or 3 days ago, there was somebody posted on the Otome Isekai subreddit, and they were talking about Villains Turns the Hourglass, something we're very well acquainted with.
You've covered that one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And they were talking about how they didn't like the way. Oh, I forget already. It was
they met as kids or something.
No, it wasn't that. But it was more like the relationship with the prince and Arya and like all this stuff, and I responded to a criticism where they were like, oh yeah, and the fact that they actually met when they were kids was so random and out of the blue and like unnecessary. And I wrote like 2 or 3 paragraphs of like, no, actually, here's why that made a lot of sense and it actually worked really well for the story. And to juxtapose this conversation, I explained in very vivid detail the story elements that it was hitting
And how
why.
did the person feel about that?
And I got complimented for it, and I got upvoted, and they were like, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's really good. Thank you."
This is a good news story of it.
And so that's sort of my point. Is like,
I think in those moments you're coming from a place of, because it can be frustrating. I have those moments where somebody's like, I didn't like this because of this, and it's just like, did we watch the same thing? Like, I don't see that.
I don't think there's a use to actually people. Like,
no,
I don't want to be like, I have superior knowledge than you, but I do feel like I can help people get more out of what they're reading, you know?
So I think what you're experiencing here is that literary criticism is kind of artistic, and you have a desire to make art.
That's
like
so
you
pretentious.
you have an interesting take on something that other people, that you want to share with other people, and you think you really have something to say there. But you think you really have something to say, and you want to say it, and you just feel that need to express yourself. And
why do you think we have a podcast?
Yeah. Sometimes you can do that in a podcast. Sometimes you can do a blog or a video essay or whatever. But that's where it all comes from.
I think for me, thinking about it on my own things, which is why I don't generally converse with the populace at large about these things, where it's like, I love this thing, and somebody can go, I hate these things for this reason, and I hear the reason, and I'm going, well, no, didn't you notice the things? Like, the thing that you're angry about is present, like, or like, your problem is already solved in it. What did you miss? You don't need to not like, you could like this thing.
Yeah.
You just, I guess this is where actually, you could like this thing, but you did it wrong, which is not a good way to approach things.
Well, and honestly, I think that's sort of where I'm coming from, is like, to me, when I approach a new piece of media, it seems obvious to me what is worth my time to pay more attention to it and look at the details and understand the deeper meaning, versus something that I'm just going to consume at a surface level because it's fun and I'm going to move on. Whereas it seems like there's a large segment of the population that is only consuming things at a surface level and just like, you know, and this might be reductive, but flashing lights and pretty colors, like, yay.
I mean, they may not know well. The reading comprehension is a skill, you know? Like, and I go back to our, like, you don't know who you're talking to. This could be children. This could be teenagers.
Yeah.
To use my Ren example with another one I remembered from one you guys have talked about for your manhwa, where you see, like, the prince guy who's being an asshole, and you can very clearly see all the red flags that, like, young people who've never actually been in like a real relationship don't know those. So they're like, oh, he cares. And you're just like, what are you talking about? Like, here's a red flag and here's a red flag, and just people can lack the living experience of it, or just the reading comprehension to know to do that. We got lucky in our upbringings that, like, through our English classes and whatnot and our other life experience, like, we have that ability. We have that. We have worked that muscle before we became adults and have it and continue to work it now. And not everybody has that. And I feel like that's why we get frustrated with the discourse sometimes when people who don't have that muscle. But that's the thing, is you can't know that. Mm-hmm. This is why I find it's really important to, like, know who I'm talking to. Like, I've gotten the general vibe and temperature of the Flop Discord, and our own Discord, which is why I like talking to the people there, because I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I use this as the example of that. Imagine you don't know me and you hear me talking the way I do about things online with no context but a profile image. You don't know what you're coming up against. Yeah. You don't know what I'm about. You don't know if I'm a custard fascist or not. You don't know.
I did have somebody tell me that the Hobbit movies weren't that bad.
And then you unfriended them?
That was me.
No, I did
said
have
that.
to.
I have to Brad, you have to get out of my house.
It's a bad door. But no, I did have
that
to
was
post
me
that
leaving.
Peter Jackson needs to get on his hands and knees and apologize for those movies, and I will hear nothing to the contrary.
I don't think that needs to be 3 movies. I don't think they should have injected all that extra crap.
Yes, they're not good, Brad. This is the same conversation we have all the time. They're not good.
Those movies are an abomination. A crime against God.
I think you could recut it down to 1 movie.
They did. It wasn't
really
good either. You would make a new movie that was intended to be made like The Thing, and it could have been good. It's not that the Hobbit movie couldn't have been good. It's that the Hobbit movies we got aren't good.
Did anybody give it to Topher Grace to work on?
Who? Is he the machete guy?
No, he's that 70s show kid.
Oh.
Yeah, he recut. Maybe it was Star Wars.
That's the thing people cut.
I forget what it was. No, he recut something to actually be like a good movie, and it was. Anyway, I did want to make one point though. You mentioned the prince and the red flags and everything.
Yeah.
There's this interesting thing in the Otome Isekai community where all of these, middle-aged women who consume this stuff, you're
going to get heat for that.
No, what?
Middle-aged?
I'm older than them.
You're not middle-aged.
You're past middle age. Brad knows he's going to die.
The point is,
Brad knows he's not going to make it. That's why he's reading all the manga now.
They see all of the red flags. They know that they're red flags,
Yeah.
and they go, "Yeah, I don't care. He's hot."
That's fine. Hey, I get it. I can fix him or I can fix her energy. We get it. As long as I feel like a lot of that is that as long as you can I know this is a problem, but I can fix him. As long as you have that opening part, you're free to do the later part. But if you only have the later part, that's when we've got a problem. Because if you go, I know better, but damn though, she a baddie. I can fix her though. It's the new poison lady in Street Fighter. That was the big overlying thing on the Reddit I'm on. It was just like, it's like everybody goes like, you can't fix her, but it's like, oh dog though, I can fix her. As long as you know, it's the thing with the trash. As long as you know, and you can declare that, honestly and truthfully, you can do what you want. You can read at any level you desire, as long as you have the ability to know. That's what I wish everybody had.
I guess maybe
life.
Maybe this all comes down to I feel like the raccoon in the dumpster full of rats.
You are the trash king.
I know what I am consuming is not necessarily good. And all of these other things running around are just eating it like it's a king's feast.
But does that make you better?
Probably not. If anything, it might make me worse. I'm the idiot who's actually consuming this stuff that I know is no good.
You're the idiot king.
But at the same time, I question, should I be telling these rats that
this
they're eating trash?
In this scenario, the raccoon is like a god to the rats.
Because the raccoon is the one that can open the trash can to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Because he has thumbs, yeah.
Because he's got problem-solving skills. There was a bunch of signs for raccoons on Cozumel, which was not a sentence I thought was going to exist. I didn't think there'd be raccoons on a tropical Mexican island, but there are.
They're everywhere.
There's enough to have signs about them and statues.
They can swim, man.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just, I get frustrated by it, and then I go, should I care at all?
I think if it comes from a place of sharing and not scolding or telling, like Ben said.
There was definitely a level of frustration for the Freer and stuff, but generally speaking...
Yes, I can attend to that you were very spicy about that for many weeks.
Generally speaking, it's more of I want everybody to get something out of this. This piece of media that I think is important, that I think is doing something important.
There are times to hold them and there's times to fold them, which I mean, there is sometimes when you get you have to know when it's I'm getting too steamed. This won't be constructive to anybody. Away. And sometimes there's the time to go, hey, I noticed this thing that you're not picking up on. Let me share it to you and see if you see it too.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is to know when you are steaming or not. Because a lot of the other times, other people don't have the introspection level to do that. And it will just make things worse.
How are your Bato comments doing?
I'm pretty good, but I also, generally speaking, I don't go into a ton of depth there. That's more snarky stuff.
Because that's the time to fold them. Don't go into the Bato comments.
I just don't
Don't go into the YouTube comments.
Oh, never go into the YouTube. Even more so than that, do not go into the Twitter comments. I did that, and it was a bad idea. I broke my own rule, my very steadfast rule, and had a really bad time.
I do think that Discord, generally speaking,
Discord, good.
is
Our Discords,
a good place
Yes.
to have those kind of conversations.
yep, because there's real people there.
Reddit, to an extent,
Depending where you are.
yeah, Reddit can get a little spicy.
Yeah, Reddit's known for not always being the best, but it's probably a step up than Twitter.
I
or
feel like
YouTube.
the Bato comment section should be better than Reddit, but is somehow way worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. This is the kind of thing where it's like, I'm still gonna argue with people online.
There's no
Like,
answer. There's no true answer.
It's just I just need to, spew my feelings for a little while.
This is our progression fantasy.
ご覧のスポンサーでお送りします。
Have you ever wanted to get Japanese snacks, candy, drinks, or toys and merch, but you can't because the stores around you don't carry them?
What a shame.
If so, you'll love Sugoi Mart. They have all that stuff and it'll ship to you right away. Valentine's Day is fast approaching. If you order right now, you can probably get a gift for the love of your life.
Ooh la la.
Because that's who you should be getting Valentine's gifts for.
Stuffing full
Or
of
just
weed
a male
food.
coworker you tolerate.
Oh.
What are you trying to say, Ben?
What's that?
So, I think this was a pretty good thing last time.
Yes, he sees it.
We tried something on air. I got something special for us to try.
Ooh, listen to that ASMR.
Ben's going to be really disappointed that he isn't here in person.
Yep, that's what we shows it.
Because what I have right here is Kit Kat. Kitsukatsu.
Kitukatsu.
It's I believe it's orange flavored. I can't read it though.
Oh,
It's
that's good. You get to eat it.
Oh wait, there it says chocolate orange. Okay.
I'll just spritz myself with that grape stuff we got ages ago that I love.
What are you talking about? There's like a whole bunch of them.
Are they all orange?
Yeah.
I don't like chocolate orange.
What?
I don't like chocolate orange.
Try it anyway.
Eat it anyway.
Do it to spite Ben.
Yeah, Ben.
I will, actually. I guess.
Ben has to sit there and
Spite's
watch
a
us
powerful
eat this.
motivator. We all know it.
I see this nefarious plan. In America, we just recently got churro Kit Kats.
Ooh.
They're
I had a churro
okay.
waffle while I was on the boat.
That is.
Oh.
It's just a hint of orange. It's pretty good. Ben, you'd really like this.
That's a
bet
chocolate orange Kit Kat.
I actually know I would because I had it in the sampler pack.
There's 5 more here if you want to come get one. Well, that's the kind of amazing thing that you can order at Sugoi Mart.
If only I'd used code APR15.
All of our listeners can click the link in the description or use code ABR15 at checkout. It's really thick chocolate.
Yeah, you don't have. You can do out of your drink.
To get 15% off your first purchase.
Sugoi Mart, taste the thickness.
I'm gonna be legit. Every month they put some really cool, interesting chips in there, and I have a great time with them.
We should probably be clear. So we get a box from Japan Crate, which is owned by Sugoi Mart.
I guess I should have been clear about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we get like a sampler basically every single month. But almost everything that you can get in the Japan Crate, you can buy on the Sugoi Mart
Individually.
marketplace, whatever.
More whistle candy.
Yeah. So stuff like the Kit Kat, especially. That's really good, but it's strong. That is dark chocolate.
Oh, you must have had a different one than mine. I don't remember mine being that dark.
Really?
Yeah. Don't
I
give me
think
another
they're all
one.
the same.
Don't you give me another one.
Sometimes there's things that you like, and sometimes they're not, and sometimes it depends on taste.
Yeah. But there's like
thereof.
600 different kinds of Kit Kat, so you can go on there and
Which we
get
ate
whatever
many of.
kind you want.
Give it a shot.
The
I'd love some.
The Kit Kat sampler is actually probably the best deal. It's like 120 Kit Kat, like two packs for like $40, and there's like 15 different flavors in there or whatever.
Bro, the sweet potato Kit Kat will change your life. No cap. I'm serious. It's so good.
Anyway, so like I said, go to segoymart.com, use code APR15, you get 15% off your first purchase, which helps us out too. So do that, please. Sugoi.
Sugoi!
Sugoi.
All right, well, it's time for...
Oh yeah, I forgot. I have to do that. Manga. Book. Club.
Well, and you have to do more because apparently today we're going to talk about something that you've read recently.
I read a book, but it wasn't a manga. It was a book about manga. I read Manga, The World of Japanese Comics by Frederick L. Schott. I can't read it. It's very German. I don't know. This was a book I got to research more about manga. It was supposed to be about Jump, but it was just in general because I'm like, hey, this is a thing I read a lot and think a lot about, but I don't really know a lot about its origins outside of what Ben has told me. And the thing that I found actually the most interesting about this for me is that this was a book written for Western audiences in 1983 and then somewhat updated in 1997. And then he makes a specific point of like, hey, instead of just updating again, I just wrote a new book, which I'm going to read at some point.
I mean, I would say it's very different these days than it was
is
back
excessively
then.
different because at the time he's talking about the magazine is doing gangbusters, which like obviously we're like 3 decades out from that, and the magazine is on its dying legs. And it's interesting to see that. But some of it, and we talked about in the first segment, some of the things that I learned, it's interesting to see what shaped this medium in a way that, like we said with Her Comics Code, we didn't get, and the way that it took place, and the way the culture of Japan and the way things work, how it became the kind of platform for stuff. But one of the things I want to touch on before I get more into some of the other information in it is that it's interesting to just go back this far. Of every manga mentioned in this book, how many pages? Admittedly, a lot of them are like tastes of manga at the end, all of which I kind of hated, admittedly. It's like about 150, 160 pages. I'd only heard about maybe 4 or 5 of them, and I only had read one of them. Young up-and-comer Akira Toriyama's Dr. Slump. He hasn't written anything else. It's just Dr. Slump. I don't know what Dragon Ball is. That hasn't been happened yet. Which is just, it's so weird even outside of the, like, literally what society is to be like, all the big names I know about are not even on the wind yet.
Heck, some of them might not have even been born yet.
Yep. And I always find it fascinating to go back. So if that's something that interests you, I would say read this. And just if you want more of that context, like cultural context of like how manga came to be, I'm excited to see when he wrote the follow-up one and if he's got more to connect it more to now. But it's weird, like I'm living in a post-One Piece world, like or freaking Dragon Ball. Like that is such a tentpole series to be talking about, and to just not have it present is strange to me. And the other thing. Oh, this drove me nuts. At the end of the book, like I said, they gave you tastes of manga of a couple different series. And when this was written, they're still in the era where they're reversing the pages so they read left to right, which drove me insane because I'm just wired when I see comics now to read top right to left and then work my way down, and they have reversed it. And it was just like, there was a time not that many decades ago that's what happened to stuff coming over from Japan. At one point he mentions, like, one of the reasons this hasn't really caught on in America yet, which, haha, funny to look at that now, is that there are just visual shorthands that we now take for granted that they didn't understand. What is it? Here, I'll do a little quiz. I was thinking about this. What does it mean if a character has, like, a bubble coming out of their nose?
They're
They are
tired.
asleep.
Yep. What does it mean when a character gets a nosebleed?
They
They're
saw
horny.
something sexy.
Yes. I didn't think about, like, well, of course I know what those mean, because we've been osmosising it for years, but, like, it's like the 80s, and they're like, Americans don't know these, like, visual shorthands, and it makes it interesting to read this, where it's like, so few of these have come to America. I think almost all the ones they put at the end at the time, I think only one of them had an official release in America, which was Barefoot Gen, which I had heard of before. Which
I feel really bad for anybody who read that when it came out, that they like look at these and they're like, oh, I really like this one, and then they can't actually read it anywhere.
Well, I mean, now almost assuredly, because it's work by Phoenix by Osamu Tezuka. There's a lot of Tezuka sucking off in this book. He literally wrote the foreword, and some of that might be like, Ben, I kind of need you for that, because like he's a guy that I know about conceptually, like a little bit, but like I don't know where he fits into it. I don't know. I haven't seen many of his works. Like, at most, it's like, he wrote Astro Boy, and Ben told me they found furry porn in his desk when he died. That's
He did a lot between those two things, yeah.
He did a lot. Like, there's a reason why he's mentioning it. And
What's he known for? Astro Boy and furry.
That's the thing that I would
freak.
remember. Admittedly, of the 4 sections, the little selections they put in here, his for Phoenix was the only one that I finished and enjoyed. The other 3 just, like, I thought were terrible and pissed me off. There's one called Ghost Warrior that was like a weird, like a Japanese World War II pilot, like, crashes, and this guy saves him, and he brings him to this island, and he's like, oh, I'm the private here or whatever, I've been holding it down, but it seems like, he's like, the soldier's like, shouldn't we go back to war? And he's like, no, I'm here. And then there's, like, babes show up, and like very racist aborigines show up, and it's just like, I'm gonna stop reading this. I don't want people to see me reading this. I don't want to be reading this. There was I felt like you guys of like a for girls one that felt very up your guys thing, which was very like the prince and princess and their big eyes and royal machinations, and I was just like, I can't do this one. And then Barefoot Gen, which is about I think it's an autobiographical story about post, like, the nuke, literally the nuke drops, and it was weird of like, hey, listen to our recent episode for Shonen Jumping the Gun on Do Retry. I think, even though Do Retry is not very good, I think Do Retry handled the nuke and firebombing of Japan better than Barefoot Gen, the series that's known for it, because the way it's portrayed in the art style and the verbiage is comical to my modern eyes, which made me feel weird to have something that I know is very serious and a work that I'm being told in this is like this perennial thing. Like, Barefoot Gen is the one that got officially released in America because it's like, hey, learn about World War II. Like, this is what the country, like, this is how Japan dealt with having you guys dropping the nukes on them. And just, like, the art being like, this looks like a silly gag manga and not like a serious thing, which is what it is, because it's autobiographical. It's talking about very serious things, and it was just like, the tone's all wrong. Like, how much these things have changed. And I guess, like, Brad, you're even worse than me with this. Like, Ben, you're my connection line. Like, how much classics from before, like, our time, like, what doesn't make it? Because it's like, I feel like a lot of our stuff only starts when anime starts happening in America, and that's where, like, our weeb roots start, and we don't really, even though there was stuff before it, we don't really go back that far, unless it's your Speed Racers and your Astro Boys, and that's in, like, this weird, messed up amalgam form.
I'd say very few things from before, like, 1985 have come over and made any kind of impact. Because you have Tezuka, he did I don't know if he coined the phrase manga, but I think we talked about this before. Like, in Japan, they're called komiku. And manga is a word for it. Manga means like whimsical picture. And that was Tezuka's style. And Tezuka had such an outsized influence that you can tell for a long time that style he developed that was really directly related to Disney became the standard. And that's how you wind up with Gekiga, which are, I think, dramatic images.
Yep, they mentioned Gekiga in here.
Gekiga, that was when it starts to get into the protest movements, and there's a little bit more of a rebellious attitude. They want to show sex and violence and political themes in the comics. But they all grew up on Astro Boy and Tezuka's stuff. And then eventually Tezuka started feeling like he was falling out of the zeitgeist, and he was a man who needed to be the center of attention. So he started making Gekiga as well. And ultimately he started making porn. But no, it's
You either die a hero or live long enough to make porn.
to die with furry live long
Well,
enough to
and-
die with furry porn in your desk.
And Tezuka made an anime studio, I think it was Mushi Studios.
Yep.
And
They talk about it's like he was an artist, but he wasn't a money guy, and that place closed. But now he's got another one now. Don't worry, like.
yeah.
And then I think between when he wrote the forward when the book originally came out and when he did the follow-up update to it, he's like, Tezuka has passed. They did not mention the furry porn found in the
That
desk.
didn't
Maybe they hadn't unlocked the desk yet. Like,
You think
I think it was his
include a
granddaughter who ratted him out. Or his daughter, I think, ratted him
who's
out.
the guy that opened Capone's locker?
Oh, Geraldo.
Geraldo opening up Capone's glove box, opening up Osamu Tezuka's work desk.
It's funny
Yeah.
that you said ratted him out.
Oh, yeah, because
What?
Mickey Mouse was probably in there.
'Cause it was mice.
Oh,
It was sexy mice.
I didn't know it was sexy mice.
But
It wasn't actually porn, but they were very sexually drawn mice.
I believe you.
yeah, very little Gekiga came over. As far as I know, I don't know anybody who published it. I've never seen it on a shelf.
I mean, it's like, why would you go back to this stuff that no one's ever heard of that's probably out of taste and out of fashion by literally decades? Like, you wouldn't...
And-
outside of a historical context, why would you pay somebody to localize this?
Yeah.
It's definitely not going to be broadly popular as
No.
entertainment. It would have to be some niche press.
The things that I read in here that were translated at the time I didn't like by a wide...
Yeah.
like, to the point where I didn't want to finish them, or they actively, like, culturally pissed me off. Like...
Well, there's going to be a lot of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
there is. But it was, I felt it was very illuminating to see all this history, to know that Japan had at a time a thriving political comics thing that they had picked up from the British and the American, like hearing them going like, oh, we like them. It's like when the Comics Code comes and they're like, oh, we love this Blondie stuff, but then all of a sudden they just started not publishing cool stuff anymore. But like how much that influenced early Japanese manga of them figuring it out, how much. And maybe even still now, like, manga artists, like, there's no formal training or background. They just sort of get into it, and they just start submitting stuff in writing.
Well, even Tezuka was
He was
studying
like
to
a
be
doctor or some sort of medical something. Or
to
other.
dodge the draft.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That part was not.
He's an
mentioned.
interesting guy. He almost got kicked out for sexually harassing nurses.
I could believe that. But how so much of this is a lay people coming into this and the popularity forming around that. Like, this isn't, as much as I shit talk Japan's Christmas for being uber capitalist, how much of this is so like artist focused, like by and large, at least at the time this was written many decades ago, like it is wild how much the artist had the power over what they were writing. I said earlier of like when there were the parents groups that's like, this is too much, this is too violent, this is too sexual. The publishers are just like, fuck you. We're just going to keep publishing these things. They like backed up their artists. Like it was just very, it was such a weird thing. Like, I guess because we're used to comics being like a collection of people, and a manga's like, there's the mangaka, and I guess he's got some assistants. He
I
or
don't know
she,
if they
they,
talked
whatever. Like,
I don't know if they talked about this, but like it wasn't big business. It was super cheap to make. A lot of it would go into libraries where it could just be lent out.
There was specific. I read about the library things because I know you've talked about that before, Ben. But that there were specific artists and publishers who were just that, and I'm sure some of the magazine ones, but also that this was supposed to be a very you read through it and you're done. But also seeing how early on they understood the idea of the magazine informs the tankabons. Also, they don't use the word tankabon. Like, there's so many words that we now go like, oh, we know that word. It's a loan word now, where they have to be like he's constantly calling it comics instead of manga. Like, he literally talks in the forward where it's like, he was like, I wasn't going to call it manga. Like, my editor told me not to because nobody knows what that means because it's the 80s, which I think is apt in America. But it's like, The magazine, the popularity of the magazine shows you what to print tankobons for you. The popularity of the tankobon shows what's going to get an anime made for it. The popularity of the anime tells you what's going to get the movie made for it. And this, like, that they already had this such a clear line, like, back in the 60s for all of that and merchandise. And, like, I didn't think about it where they were talking about, it's like, the people who are on top are making money because where else is the money going? At that point in time is to them. Like, it was I never think about something like drawing comics as like a lucrative career that is out, like, that is within reach of, like, not just a couple like supernovas, but like it was back then because there was money in the magazines.
Oh yeah. And I think to an extent, even though the parents groups got involved in everything, it was kind of just beneath the Japanese government. Like, they've just never really gotten that involved in comics.
Well, I mean, like, the government's more about the political stuff. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's some of the drawings of their comics are just like, this looks American made. Like, this is something that could be in the West. Like, some of their gag comics, it's like, this is a shit post that looks like something from, like, the 80s that you'd see in the Sunday Funnies, and you don't think, you go, Japan, they have their own art style. They're completely and it's like, no. Like, this is an Ouroboros. This is informed from their own cultural stuff. Like, they make a point in this book to talk about, like, the way the things they're drawing, the Japanese are drawing art about, and all that, but also the way that these other things are coming in pre-World War II, pre-World War I, about where they're getting the inspiration to do this stuff. Like, all the pieces were there for this to come together to make this the big industry. That was the cheap thing. The thing I didn't think about that made a good point, where it's like, if you're going to work and you're getting on the trains in a kind of collective society that Japan has, where it's like, be courteous to your fellow man in a lot more or less a way like America's, like, big, loud, brash, play your music. You're on the train. You're going to work. You need to be courteous to other people. You're by yourself. What's more quiet and for yourself and entertaining and cheap, like manga is? And I think that's part of why, I mean, they talk about in the book, like, why that as a platform blows up, because it's kind of perfect for what's going on. It is cheap, easily recyclable, move-onable entertainment that's really good to do quietly by yourself. And I just think in the way that we talk about, like, how the society forms the heroes and villains, that the society forms what mediums grow and why and how, and I mean, the way things work around things. I already talked about, like, the government comes in and it's just like, hey, no more political comics. Or, like, when the Americans come in after World War II and it's like, yeah, all your, like, war and samurai bullshit, get that out of here. We don't want this to happen again. Like, this, it's the little bit of denazification you get from Germany in Japan. So it's like, for a while, you just don't get samurai stories. But that fighting spirit needs to come out somehow. And at least this book purports, I don't know the time period well enough, it's like that starts showing up in, like, sports manga, that feeling of training and fighting and pushing beyond your limits. It can't take place in war, so it takes place on, the school grounds or something.
Yeah.
And the way they express these ideas and have to work around other ones.
One of the big early Gekiga was a boxing manga.
Ashito no Joe, I think, is the name I heard a lot. That shows up in here a lot.
Joe something.
Yeah. They talk about sports stuff. They talk about, like, it's interesting to see how early a lot of these forms. There's an entire chapter on girls manga, and that feels like such a precursor decades and decades and decades later to what you're doing on heroin addiction. There's an entire chapter and bit on, like, what do they call it? like work or like craftsmanship manga, which like I don't think we personally see a lot, but like sports are kind of a part of that, where it's like this guy's a carpenter or this guy makes sushi or something like that, and seeing the growth in that. It was funny to the time period that there's like an entire segment of that chapter about mahjong manga, which like we're extra never getting that over here, and good riddance, because I'm an American Yakuza player and I don't know what the fuck mahjong is.
Hey, we got Hikaru no Go.
We did get Go, but like it's like that is a one-off, because like the author makes a specific point of like, if you don't know what mahjong is, because they are written to an audience, that there's so much mahjong manga that is written for an audience that already knows what mahjong is at that point. In the way that it's like, I could say like earlier, where it's like, oh, we know now the visual shorthand because it's artists in there contain like they're writing for monthly and then later weekly. Like, how do I capture this idea visually and quickly? And you have that economy of
slapping down a tile like a potato chip.
Yeah.
That would be like in Dogs Red, where they have to explain what hockey is. And as someone who knows what hockey is, I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. But it's important because not everybody knows how that sport works. And that's what Hikaru no Go did. And to an extent, what we're constantly getting with like Akane Banashi of like, here's what this art form is and the structure. So, I'm excited to read. I'm happy that I read this book. I was hoping to get more things that I wanted to read, and I felt like it didn't do anything on that front. But it kind of showed so many of the seeds of where we are now that even if I can't draw direct lines, like a lot of these are lost in our particular zeitgeist, and I can't speak to the Japanese system because like I don't live there and I'm not Japanese. Big surprise. But it is interesting to see how many of the things that are still present now were already present then.
Yeah.
And it's always just funny to get these tastes of like, here's a history book written decades ago. In that same vein of I read, there's this giant book on animation that was written in like the mid 90s that are like, there's some trailers, this upstart Toy Story is about to come out. CG animation, what's that? And it's always fun to go back to pop culture stuff that it's like, the giant thing that has come and gone and has been gone for years is the big thing on the horizon to them at the time they wrote it. So, I would, if you enjoy the cultural context for manga stuff, I would definitely suggest this book, Manga, The World of Japanese Comics. I will probably report back when I get my hands on the follow-up one and anything else this guy's written. I'm hoping that follow-up one gets closer to like when I start knowing what things are. But it's a cool history thing that only a few decades ago, like, 4 decades ago, the landscape is, like, unrecognizable to what it is now, where it's, like, it's everywhere and very well known, and we read right to left, and we understand all the shorthands. Like, things are generally untouched because we know, we get it. And back then, it's like, we can't read right to left. We don't understand these cultural references. We don't understand what this shorthand iconography is. Like, what's a salaryman? What's a samurai? Like, those are now funny things to think about as being problems that we're just like, oh yeah, we just get it. It's a part of our culture now too. So that's my book report on this book that I read about manga.
Oh, that was a literal manga book club.
Yep.
Manga.
We did it.
We did it.
We got there.
No, that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing. I hope our listeners got some interesting information out of that, and maybe check it out on your own. Sounds like a short but good read.
Yes, I would recommend it. It looks a little chunkier because, like I said, they have a bunch of the like manga taster plate at the back, but. Read this on vacation and breezed by pretty well, and I felt informed.
If you want to check out some older manga that you've probably never seen before.
If it's even in America now, who knows?
Yeah.
But they give you a lot of like example panels of the things they're talking about, so it's neat seeing the way visuals have changed over time and certain styles that we just don't really see that they used to draw like I said, like some of them look like old Sunday papers in America.
Right. Well, thanks for listening to That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. All of our social media links like Discord, Patreon, and those other ones are on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. You can also find articles on various topics as well as new manga reviews. And we'd love to hear from you on any of those social platforms. You can leave a comment right on the site. You can even just send an email to isekaisenseisama@gmail.com. We're always looking for feedback, and we'd love to chat with you on the topics that we cover. If you prefer to listen to the podcast in high-quality stereo, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, where we simul-release all the episodes. We also release that version early on Patreon, so if you can't wait, you can join us there and listen as soon as the episode is done cooking. In addition to getting the episodes early, all tiers also get to vote on the next series that we cover on heroin addiction, as well as getting a shout-out. Speaking of heroin addiction, definitely get subscribed. We're doing something special for not the next episode, but the one after that. We're going to be covering 3 of the worst manhwa. We need to set a baseline for our rubric, figure out what's actually good and what's not, because I'd say we've been rating things pretty high, although compared to the scores that get given, they're a little on the low side, so we need to see, just where the bottom of the barrel is.
I'm steepling my fingers in evil excitement.
I'm excited too. I think there will be some gems. Maybe. I don't know. Could be terrible.
As an outside viewer, I do think it's important that you find out what the bottom is, because I think you need that to calibrate a scale.
Yeah.
If you only ever eat the gourmet food, how do you know what's bad?
We also would like to hear from people on what kind of perks they want to see on Patreon. So come join us and let us know what you want to see. And, of course, we got to shout out our patrons. So at our Reincarnator tier, we have Moon, who's a friend of the show. She's guested twice so far. She's a moderator on the r/Otome Isekai subreddit, which you should check out if you're into the Otome Isekai stuff. It's a fun place to hang out. Also at our Reincarnator tier, we've got Cake Dwarf. And as is tradition now,
I'm going to butcher some more German.
I'm going to butcher some German here. Here we go. Ich bin nicht so gut in der deutschen Aussprache, wie ich dachte. I actually forget what that means.
Oh, that's not good.
I wrote it a couple days ago and I forgot.
Trust your prior self, I guess.
Yeah, so Cake Dwarf is yet to come on and tell me how badly I've butchered everything. Wow. So I'm waiting to hear back.
Truly saint-like patience.
At our merchant tier, we've got Kill Hour. Shout out.
Shout out to Kill Hour.
And last and definitely not least, at our commoner tier, we've got Rena.
Thank you, Rena.
And before we go, I wanted to thank Segoy Mart again and remind everybody that you can get 15% off your first order by clicking the link in the description or using the code APR15 at checkout. Kermit, you want to plug?
Yes, speaking of plugs, you can catch me and Brad on Shonen Jumping the Gun, as we said, on this very feed where we read the first chapter of a manga and make wild-ranging predictions and opinions about it from very little information. So we've got some interesting episodes coming down the pipe. I don't know what will be out now.
Next one to come out is episode 10.
Episode 10. It's going to be an interesting one.
You gotta subscribe and listen to find out.
You gotta hear it to believe it.
And later on, it's probably going to be a couple episodes at this point, but we're going to have a special guest.
We're gonna have some. We have some cool stuff coming down the pipe. Hopefully, going to get more special guests.
And Ben, what do you guys got going on over at Words About Books?
Oh, finishing up the Hunger Games. Then we'll be focusing on another book, going into some sci-fi. And then we're going to be dropping like an intro post, I guess, to a Tolkien deep dive we're going to be doing. That's going to be a We're calling it a mini series, but it's gonna take years. So
Macro series.
The episodes
probably
are
become-
mini.
Yeah.
yeah, that'll probably be coming out in February. So
And you said that
unless you're a patron,
those ones are coming out on Patreon every week.
if you're a Patreon, you get them as soon. We're recording them in batches, and if you wanted to join the Patreon, you get them as soon as I finish editing them.
Nice.
Otherwise, they're going to come out once a week on the main feed. Which do you value more, money or time?
Yes. Well, once again, thanks for listening. And, if you end up exploring another world, make sure you aren't just looking at the surface level.
Superman is never going to be mean to a random civilian he's trying to save or interact with. Okay, sorry, it's a squeaky door. English-made book about manga, and shoot, I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Cut that last little bit.
I don't know the words to that song.
Oh yeah, tailspin. Oh tailspin. Turns together through thick and thin with another tailspin.
All right. That's the thing.
Do you have to record a thing because I have to tell the custard story now?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. So boop, I'll do the boop for you guys. Boop. So the custard fascist story is, so last week Brad and I went out for dinner and he really wanted custard, so we went to this new custard place.
Frozen custard.
Frozen custard. Is there a different kind?
I mean, regular custard.
Is that not frozen?
That's more like pudding.
It's like pudding, yeah.
Okay. So it's hopping and bopping for some reason on this chilly Sunday night.
This tiny little store.
Tiny little store.
We don't know why it was so busy.
And we're like in line packed shoulder to shoulder, and there's this like young 20-something kind of scruffy looking guy with like a little knit cap on, slightly in front of us in line. I would say probably, because we're kind of crushed in there, like maybe like arm's length at max for me, but I've got admittedly a wide reach. And on his hat, I can see pins for what looks like a swastika, but some other stuff I can't quite make out, and like the American flag with a thin blue line on it, but then there's like an orange, like kind of horizontal cross out line on it. But I'm not wearing my glasses, so I can't see them enough to make out what's going on, and to get any closer to this man would invade his personal space and be weird. I also don't want to go, Brad, what's on his hat? Is this guy a Nazi? Like, I don't want to speak too loudly and alert this man. So I'm just stuck in this like Schrodinger's cat situation of, is this man a fascist or is this like an anti-fascist punk? Are these anti-Nazi, anti-blue line pins?
And it's important to note that the area that we are in central Pennsylvania, it's really up in the air which one it could be.
This guy had an aura that could have gone in either direction. Usually, sometimes you can get a read on people, but genuinely it's like this could go in either direction. Sometimes it's hard to tell with punks.
I don't know how aware everyone is, but I think everybody knows about the whole January 6th thing and how they've arrested a lot of people, and a lot of people have been getting sentenced. It's something like 80% of the people who were arrested and sentenced so far are from Pennsylvania.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Granted, we're like right there. So
I know, but I'm gonna have to remember that statistic. That's fun. But yeah, and then we finally get out to the car, and I'm like, Brad, did you see that guy's like possibly fascist pins? And he's just become the story of he's the Schrodinger's fascist. He could have been a fascist. He could have been an anti-fascist, and I will never know.
Yeah, because unfortunately, I did not see it.
He didn't notice at all because I
did not see it.
Hey.
All we know is he has a strong political stance.
He has a strong
one way or
political
another.
And I felt that was very fitting to Attack on Titan, where it's like, could that have been pro or anti? I don't know. I didn't have my reading depth. I didn't have my glasses on, so I couldn't tell. To get any closer to it would have been invading his personal space. And this is the situation we were stuck in. So that is the story of the the Schrodinger's custard fascist that I've
Should
been
have asked
enjoying
him.
telling people.
Should ask as like a crypto question. Like, how do you feel about Attack on Titan? How do you feel about that, Aaron Yeager?
Well, unless somebody goes really into, because like at a surface level, you can be like, oh yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, it
it's
doesn't
really
tell
good.
you anything because a lot of people really liked Attack on Titan in the beginning. That doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah, but how
like, how do you feel
much
about,
did
like,
you like
context?
it? Did like you really,
Did
you
really
finish
like
it?
it, or did you just sort of like it?
If you were to choose an anime profile picture,
I feel like that just opens another, like that's the second tier of the can of worms to open to know what's inside the box.
What's in the box?
He says an anime girl, I don't know. That's still unsure.
yeah, that's tricky. Does she have glasses?